people are posting to me on my group saying the link to the webinar takes me to the registration page. Am I missing something, or does it only work at 11 a.m.?
Gav, we're live.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Hello, everybody. My name is Gavin Olivier. I'm going to be your host today, and trust that as people continue to join, we'll look forward to spending some time with you today. It's really lovely to be welcoming everybody from across the world. Derek Thomas, I see you in Lusaka. Some people joining from Namibia and all over our beautiful country, and really looking forward to spending the time with you all today. Welcome to our first WITS Digital Campus webinar, and thank you all for taking the time out of your undoubtedly busy schedules to join us on this webinar today. We're going to let people continue to join, as I said, so we trust that if you are affected by the dreaded loss of electricity in South Africa, that you have a reliable backup and are geared to enjoy the time with us. We have certainly gone to lengths today to ensure that we have a backup for the backup, and perhaps even a backup for that backup, and trust that we won't have to use any of them today. Just some housekeeping for the session. We encourage you to view the presentation today by selecting the speaker mode. So if you're going to the Zoom, and where you see at the top right-hand corner of your screen where it says view, if you click on that and select side-by-side mode, what you will then get is the best part of the presentation with the speaker presenting at the time, image coming up. And Nalene, who's going to be our online administrator, will make sure that that is stuck in the screen for you. Given it is webinar mode, all the cameras and mics are off and muted, but you do have access to the chat, which you clearly have found and already saying great to see you and welcome. We invite you to pop those tough questions you may have during the webinar through to our panelists and our presenter today. And my team and I will keep an eye out for those and look to answer those during the Q&A panel session, which we're going to pick up later. Just as a disclaimer, we are going to be recording the session today, and we'll make this available to you all post the event. So please be on the lookout for an email from my team and I, as we look to share the presentation that we delivered through to you today. So let's kick off. I'd like to introduce our guest speaker today from the WITS Center of Systems Engineering, Nick Hopkins. Nick is passionate about people, processes, problems, and opportunities, and how the world is interconnected. Nick always wanted to be an engineer, he said to me, and then discovered the world of systems thinking during time spent working in transport services across Europe, Asia, and Africa. He's a true blue systems thinker. Nick is with me here today in the office. And Nick, the question that I have for you today is, why is critical systems thinking relevant in today's volatile, uncertain, complex world?
Hi, Gavin. Thank you for the introduction. And yes, it is a really important question to ask. And I think, let me just first of all introduce myself. I am Nick Hopkins. I'm a senior lecturer in systems engineering in the WITS Center for Systems Engineering in the Faculty of Engineering and the Built Environment. My word, how many times can somebody introduce the word engineering into the very beginning of what we're talking about and actually find ourselves sitting in a situation that you might be going, well, I'm not really interested in engineering, and this is going on about engineering. Well, guess what? I'm not here to talk to you about engineering, thankfully, because I'm sure there's some engineers on this call that might be going, if I read Nick's profile, what on earth does he really know about engineering? But I'll leave that for your own investigation. What I'm here to talk to you about is critical systems thinking, a mindset for change. So how do we address change? You will find yourself somewhere on the thinking evolution paradigm, somewhere between being innovative and adaptive, where we talk about transformation becoming a way of business, a new ecosystem to identify and act upon both technological and market trends. Or you might find yourself in that situation where you talk about business as usual, that old familiar way. the way we've done things for the last 25 years. Or you might find yourself somewhere in between. And if we talk about being present and active, that's often where you find what you call the heroes or the sheroes that are experimenting with change. We might formalize this experimentation. We might even create strategic roadmaps in strengthening collaboration. And we might converge towards a dedicated transformation team with top-level support. I think we would all like to be in that innovative and adaptive phase, but we find ourselves not necessarily there. And we don't necessarily pay enough attention to the future. As Gerd Leonard, a futurist, who is probably one of the foremost futurist thinkers in the world, he says, are you paying enough attention to the future? And what kind of future do you want? Do you want a good future? So what does good mean? When we talk about these sort of situations, good in the past often spoke about prosperity, and prosperity was profit. Yes, we all want profit, but in today's world, what we're actually talking about is a stakeholder economy, integrating prosperity, planet, purpose, and people. We find ourselves in a world where there are waves of change. The fourth industrial revolution, where science fiction is becoming science fact. Everything is converging with technology. Data is everything. You could even consider data as the new currency. You can consider COVID-19, the great accelerator. And people have talked about it being a black swan, but it's not a black swan. It's actually a green swan. It's accelerated sustainable development trends like nobody else has been able to do in the past, which draws us towards that concept of climate change, where we're not just talking about green is everything. Well, green is actually the new digital, and sustainable is the new profitable. And that leads us to this new economic logic, where we talk about investment in technology, but the greater opportunity is actually transcending technology and investing in humanity and technology in the context of a sustainable world. When one considers that scenario, the new economic logic is actually talking about what people are talking about today as the fifth industrial revolution. You're probably sitting there and going, my word, he's just introduced the fourth industrial revolution. He's now introducing the fifth industrial revolution. Where on earth do I stand? Well, what this shows us is we're not dealing with waves of change. We're dealing with a tsunami of change. These things are hitting us as quickly as we can, in a quicker way than we can actually manage them. And how do these changes manifest themselves? Well, they can be one or more of the following geographically. Are we talking about the United States of Africa, United States of Europe? You know, are we talking about actually the world is so small now because we're also hyper-connected? Are we talking about financial and economic change, where we see the major crashes in huge companies because they aren't adopting sustainable practices? Are we talking about climate and environmental change, where people are much more conscious about the polluters, the major polluters out there, and where people will invest because of those things? Competition is being accelerated by technological breakthroughs. The way we work has changed. We no longer are sitting in an you no longer are sitting in an auditorium. We're sitting here over a webinar, and I'm doing this presentation to you the way we are, and this is business as usual in a way. The legislative and regulatory frameworks are changing, and what we are actually finding is a number of these things are coming together and changing the status quo. And what that creates is problems. And that when we talk about problems, it's where performance deviates from what is expected. And the flip side of the coin to problem is opportunity. And this puts us in a position where we can't just look at problems, we've got to look at decisions and contingency planning, past, present, and future. So are you ready for the great transformation? A term coined by Gerd Leonard. And the issue is do we find ourselves with change where we are now? We might be performing perfectly and we are A-okay. Well, guess what? That old status quo ain't going to stay like that for much longer, because change is going to change our world, and we might even be seeing it and quite fearful of it, or we are on that slippery downward slope and we're resisting it and praying for change, praying that we'll go back to the old status quo, that a miracle will happen. But no, we end up in chaos, which drives us to think again, come up with transformative ideas, and integrate into this ever-integrating society, ever-integrating world where technology is driving us together. Oh, and by the way, once you come up with that idea, that's not when it's over. That's when the sweat really starts. And you've got to climb that hill, and you hope that you get to the top of Kilimanjaro. Sorry, let me not start singing for you guys because I'm not a very good singer. And you get to the new status quo and yay, I'm number one. But are you actually the guy now in the old status quo again? So business as usual is no longer. We need different skills. We need to get much better at driving change, or we will be driven by it. The question is, do you have a reactive mindset where you look at the trends, and the trends are showing profits eroding, sales eroding, everything's working against us, and we're praying for a miracle to happen, those common mind traps like the reactance bias? Or do we find ourselves in a proactive mindset where we say, this is where the magic happens, getting out of your comfort zone and looking for that winning edge? For this proactive mindset, what we need is soft skills, things that address complex problem-solving, decision-making, and contingency planning, because the world is getting more complex. Critical thinking, creativity, negotiation, all these good things that were never at the top of the list when we started back in 2015. And 2015 doesn't seem so long ago. You know, things that didn't happen in 2015 would be things like Tinder. You know, those things weren't there. And what we need is critical systems thinking. We need to see the bigger picture. If I look at the old story of, or folktale of the elephant brought to the village of blind men, just on an aside, my wife always says, I don't know why you tell the story. I always thought that all men were blind. But you know what? She's actually quite intuitive, and she helps me see the bigger picture often when I find myself blinkered. And the story goes like this. The one blind man walks up to the elephant and touches the tail and goes, it's a rope. How nice. I don't know why well, we can swing. Yay. Another one touches the side of the elephant and goes, it's a wall. Why would they build a wall in the middle of our village? The next one puts his arm around the leg of the elephant and goes, a tree, fantastic. And it will give us shade during these hot summer months. The next one touches the trunk and goes, snake. No, he doesn't. He actually goes, snake, I'm a snake handler and I love handling snakes. The next one touches the end of the tusk and goes, it's a spear. Why would they give me a spear? I can't even see who I'm fighting. The last one touches the elephant's ear and goes, flying carpet. Cool, dude. The point behind this is if we can't see the bigger picture, we can't address the problem or opportunity. So what we need, as I said before, is critical systems thinking. But what is critical systems thinking about? You heard me talk about engineering up front, and at first you probably went, I'm not interested in talking about that. I don't want to hear about engineering. But I've had other people answer that question, and they've spoken about it's all about technology. It's about the fourth industrial revolution. It's about design thinking and Lean Six Sigma. I know how to think. Why on earth do I need to talk? Why do I need to understand what critical systems thinking is? I know what critical thinking is. Why systems? It's all about getting to solutions, problem solving, and being solution centric. Well, I had to tell you all of those are wrong. In critical systems thinking, the systems thinker needs to understand how the big picture works, where everything is connected, where the system is more than the sum of its parts. It includes people, hardware, software, processes, documentation, all things required to achieve system level results, which is the desired performance that we want. We don't want to find ourselves on that slippery slope, do we? If 2020 taught us anything, it's that we are interconnected and vulnerable. For the global interconnectedness to function, we need leadership with moral backbone and ability to inspire towards the future. We need more skills that are anticipatory, design, and transformative, addressing patterns of behavior, system structures, and mental models. In order to understand what is happening, those events or symptoms that we see in our everyday lives that result from change. What we need to be able to do is understand what are those values and beliefs and assumptions that shape the systems that inform the structures of how the parts all fit together and the trends that come from those. And what we've got to look for is that leverage point within the system. Put away the guesswork. And as a systems thinker, as Peter Senge said, be consistent and have a consistent and strong commitment to learning. You wouldn't be here if you didn't have that viewpoint. Always look at multiple viewpoints when considering a situation. Think about the elephant. Having a willingness to challenge your own mental model, not the mental models of others, as engineers like to say. Sorry to all the engineers on the course. On the webinar, should I say. So where does critical systems thinking come from? Well, actually has evolved over many, many years, from back during the Age of Enlightenment and the Copernican revolution with Aristotle and Nicholas Copernicus, all the way through to Donella Meadows, Peter Senge, Michael Jackson, sorry, apologies. And, Michael Jackson is one of the foremost critical systems thinkers of this world. And guess what? He's now, but look at the time span that critical systems thinking has come from. So when I say that it comes from mathematics and information science, economics and business science, system science, yes, and engineering, social health and human science, and natural and applied science, It comes from everywhere. And guess what? It's being applied in practice everywhere. From retail science, companies like Massmart, energy, maybe Eskom could learn a thing or two, transport, agricultural production, natural sciences, environment and climate change, marketing, finance, human resource management, all of these have adopted and used critical systems thinking. So it's for all of us, not just one of us. So critical systems thinking is the study of systems. It is a mindset, not a process, not even an exact science. It's a powerful set of principles and processes based on experience and wisdom. It's effectively dancing with systems, as Donella Meadows said. It employs systems principles that are not rigid. They need interpretation and tailoring to each set of circumstances, but they are always common themes. Critical systems thinking improves system results dramatically. If ignored, experience identifies failure, fragmentation, or suboptimal performance will result. As Aristotle is misquoted as saying, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. What he actually said was, the system is something besides and not the same as its elements. I think it's important sometimes that we get to the source of what the issue is. So we go on to these quotes and we go, but Aristotle said that, that's what, if you go to everything that you've done before, that's what it says. All the quotes say that he said the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Let's challenge our own mental models. Let's stay a learner. Let's always look at things from multiple perspectives. For this to work, we have to understand our stakeholders. And it's not just stakeholders within a project, it's through life cycle of the of any asset or any system that we are looking to develop. We need to look at things from multiple viewpoints. Remember the elephant? What happens if we change those viewpoints to represent strategic, operational, acquisition, systems, sustainability, different viewpoints around the system that impact on how we view it? Let's understand our context. Let's not do what we call the Lifetime Achievement Award and try and save the world by doing everything you can't. Understand what is your system of interest and how your system of interest interacts in the wider system or the containing system. So your system of interest interfaces or interacts with sibling systems in its containing system. And then you have third-party influences looking in from the outside. Understanding your context. So no investment is more valuable than resources spent understanding the context of a situation, the stakeholders, and the various system viewpoints. This is what we call critical systems thinking. Critical systems thinking being a mindset for change. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Clearly, your passion for critical systems thinking is clear for everybody to see. Thank you. That was thought-provoking and insightful. I'd now like to invite our panelists, Lesotho Pohole and Paul Bester, to join us in the conversation. So, gents, if I can ask you to please turn on your cameras, unmute, and join us on screen. Thanks so much. Cool, we'll just wait. There we go. Allow me to introduce the two gentlemen that I've pulled up into the panel for us to investigate and explore critical system thinking in the context of business a little bit further. Letlotlo is Director and Chief Systems Officer at the Wits Center for Systems Engineering and describes himself as a passionate systems thinker who loves working on wicked problems. I've heard him often say that, and I'm keen to understand more about this, Letlotlo. Paul is the Senior Manager at the Center at Wits and describes himself as demonstrably analytical. Welcome, gents. Good to have you here with us today. We've had a number of questions come through in the chat during Nick's presentation. We're going to certainly look to get to address some of those with each of our panelists. But I'd like to first pose a question to you, Letlotlo. We've heard, even in Nick's presentation, to speak about digital transformation, and it's on the lips of almost every executive we speak to today in business. How do companies know if they are ready for the digital transformation?
Thank you very much, Gavin, and welcome to everyone on this webinar. Yeah, Gavin, I think that's a very difficult question. But luckily at home, my son Iminati is always asking me very difficult questions, so I've had some practice. So when it comes to digital transformation, there's a number of perspectives that one needs to consider. And I think it's something that is also evolving because it's new to a lot of people. What I can say quickly is that I know, for example, at Wits University, digital transformation is one of the key things that we're trying to push, and we have professors that are looking at that. But to answer your question quickly, I normally tell people to look into 4 different areas. And I know by default, people want to jump to technologies and all of that. But I think Nick, in his presentation, he mentioned that while the future is in technology, the bigger future is in transcending it. So the 4 things that I think people need to look at to test whether they're ready for digital transformation. The first one is around the operational sustainability. And that's asking yourself, does your organization have a stable base to operate from? Because without that, you don't have a business. And linked to that, we look at organizational agility. And by that, I mean, how quickly can your organization react to change? We've had COVID now, there's more things to come, and there has been other things in the past. How quickly can your organization react to change? The next one is around the strategic agility. And this time I'm saying, how quickly can your organization anticipate change? So we need to be out there looking forward to say what could go wrong, what could go right, what are the opportunities, and how quickly can we change? Are we stuck to our own mental models to say we've been doing this for 100 years or not? And the last one, people laugh at me. I say you need to have a disruptive culture. But I'm not saying disruptive in a negative way, Gavin. I'm talking about how receptive is your organization to change. And if you combine those 4 and you ask yourself honestly whether any of this makes sense to you and how ready you are. I tell people that with systems thinking, especially critical systems thinking, people need to investigate the truth that they believe. Get different perspectives from multiple stakeholders, and then you will know really if you are ready for this digital transformation or not. Thank you.
Thanks, Letlotlo. Some of what I was hearing you saying is this idea of not only being adaptive and ready to change, but anticipating that change is some of the key skills that us as business leaders and pretty much in any area of business that you're in, you need to be asking the what if questions. So, nobody would have realistically thought that we were going to be struck by COVID, I'm sure. And yes, there may be some sort of people out there that look at that, but what are those what if questions that we need to be thinking about on a daily basis, to be asking ourselves, what could possibly be the next wave, to next point of, it's not only waves, it's tsunamis in a way that we're faced with. And that is going to demand of us to be adaptive and agile. So thanks for that. I'm sure we'll get some more, and I see some questions popping up. Paul, I want to come through to you. We've seen that, critical systems thinking is Paul, I've heard you say it's somewhat of a glue. It is about a thinking, it is about a mindset. How does this assist us, in your view, to build cohesive teams working towards a common goal, particularly now when we're faced with hybrid work models and disruptive points, similar to what Letlotlo was highlighting to us?
Thank you, Gavin. Yes, critical systems thinking is actually that glue that can help you to transform from a mindset where we all do our own thing to one where we form a cohesive team working together to achieve a bigger goal. The basis of systems thinking, as Dick has alluded, is about holism. That's seeing the whole system, understanding that the company operates as a system and it has a goal that you want to achieve. And then filling on to what Letlotlo said, it's about understanding, changing your mindset to understand that you have a critical role to play in the company for it to achieve its bigger goal, in terms of working as a team and achieving the higher level goals that you want to achieve. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. So clarity of purpose, clarity of goals, and then investigating those and making sure that we, perhaps to your point of asking the what-if questions in that context. Awesome. Nick, I want to come back to you, and I've often heard you say systems thinking, it's not something you do, but it's something you get. What does that really mean?
Thanks, Gavin. So systems thinking is, it changes the culture in your family life. It changes the culture in your business life, because it changes the way you speak. It changes the way that you engage with people. It changes everything about the way you think. And yes, there are some techniques and processes that you can adopt to aid you in doing this. But what you'll find is that you'll find yourself asking different questions. Rather than what is the solution to, it's why does this happen? What has caused the situation? And if I do nothing, will it get better, stay the same, or get worse, for instance? And it allows you to actually get past those situations where you might be told, you should do this because I tell you to a culture where you can say, let me ask why, and ask and get an understanding of what I'm supposed to be doing. Whereas we live in a culture where actually asking why is seen to be disrespectful in many ways. And so what I'm saying to you is critical systems thinking brings you to a point of understanding and points you in the direction in which you need to go.
So this idea again that I'm hearing consistently from you through the presentation, it's a thinking skill, it's a mindset, it's an approach to more than just business, but really life, Nick. So one of the things that we often get asked, and Yanni's picked up on it, and previously, said to me, what is the link that systems thinking and the link between, or the commonality between systems thinking and design thinking? Gents, who would like to pick up on that one?
I'm going to suggest Letlotlo for this because he's.
That's a good one. I was hoping.
Would you like to pick up on that one?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. I think one needs to understand that there's a number of tools that we use in systems thinking to enable us to be able to get to the root cause of the problem, to design things with the right characteristics. So design thinking on our side, it's one of the tools that can be used under systems thinking. And I think the main difference is that there's a focus when you're looking at design thinking. You might be having a design sprint where you want to come up with a certain product quickly, and you do follow some of those key processes in design thinking. And it's mostly towards a product and a service. That's how a lot of people are using that tool. So it's about knowing the tool and when to use it. So from a systems thinking perspective, we can come and say, before you tackle any challenge, before you design any system, are you sure that you are tackling the right problem? You know, who needs it? I think me, especially as an engineer, in my early years, I just wanted to get things done, and it was actually a nice technical challenge. I didn't care about whether there's a market for it. A lot of things that we did, there was a market for one. And when one evolved and went into technology management, then you realize that, wow, you know what, technology is, as I like defining it, I think technology, it's that created capability manifested in artifacts to augment human skills. And the minute you understand those elements, that there's a human in between that needs to be catered for, there's an end user, there's somebody that you're augmenting their skills. So you need to take a bigger view. And as Nick showed with that elephant, you need to understand what are you really dealing with. And once you do, you are clear on the purpose, then you can use your design thinking type skills. Thank you.
Thanks, Victor. Yeah, the critical thing that I'm picking up there is this idea of, you know, solving the problem with the end user in mind. And it's something that we often see. You know, I was sharing with Nick earlier on that, you know, we've recently, very close to home, seen us go down a path of implementing something, and we haven't quite expanded the stakeholder environment enough to identify who those end users are, and who the various people. From a stakeholder perspective is actually the word that Nick used, you know, to make sure that we've actually got the stakeholders involved in that. I want to go back to a couple of questions that landed in the chat, and thanks. And Don, I'm going to pick up on yours first, because I think it is such a critical thing. Is how can we nurture systems thinking in schools? Who would like to take that?
I don't want to talk too much because I've got my team here, but I'll take this one, and then we can do the redistribution later. The school is actually a nice part of the bigger system. You know, so we've got schools at different levels, and I can tell you now, one of the executives, when we were doing some training at one company, he told us that, wow, we were looking at one tool that's called the De Bono's 6 thinking heads. And it shows that, you know, we have different perspectives, and you must look at one head at a time for you to get the different views. And he said, wow, but my child at school has been doing this. And he said he felt stupid because, you know, children assume that parents know everything. And, you know, on my side, you know, especially as an engineer, people might assume that you know everything. And I say there's no limit to what we don't know. So people just come and say, wow, at school, we were doing this. Now I see mommy is like a blue head and you are the red head, daddy. And the guy had no clue what they're talking about. So I'm saying this because in some schools, they are already incorporating some of these tools. And I know my son is going for high school next year, and I attended some parent meeting just preparing for next year. And the school were telling us that they are focusing on critical system skills in the school. So I think it's there already. And it's not important to isolate it it's actually important to embed it across the different courses so that the teachers can actually easily apply systems thinking across all the different courses, because they are all integrated at the end of the day. They serve a bigger purpose, as Nick has talked about. Thank you.
Thanks. So yeah, Don, I hope that answers your question. And perhaps, if it's something that's not been picked up at a school, perhaps there's the answer to go and prompt the leadership of that school and say, to what extent are your educators skilled in this environment and in this subject matter, because it is something that we are very conscious of changing the world that we live in today. And unless we are, to Letlotlo's point, adaptable and agile, we're going to be graduating kids that aren't ready for the modern world of work. And that's going to be a crime. A couple of questions as well. Rishlan asking, are there any books you can recommend to get a deeper understanding? Nick, you're gonna pick up that one.
So there are a number of books, and I'm just going to mention 4 of them for you. Peter Senge's book, The Fifth Discipline, The Art and Practice of the Learning Organization. He talks about systems thinking being the 5th discipline. Donella Meadows, Thinking in Systems, a primer. And you also get that in audio, just for those who are a little bit more lazy like me, that like to get things read to them. And then there's Michael Jackson, and by the way, he didn't resurrect himself. It's Michael C. Jackson, and he talks about critical systems thinking beyond the fragments and systems approaches to management. So those are all books that you can go and read up on that talk about three of the foremost people in systems thinking in our world.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick.
Sure.
And I must admit, when you mentioned Peter Senge's 5th discipline, I was reminded as a HR graduate and trainee in the mining industry many years ago, going on a course, and that was one of the prescribed books for me. And it is a really good read, and I'd strongly recommend it to the audience here today. So look out for it. It's still very relevant and gives great insights into the topic. I want to come through to you, Paul. There was a question said, and I must be wary, I think it came from Ashton. Yes, Ashton Henry saying, would it be wise for a professional to perhaps certify him or herself as Lean Six Sigma? I'm sure that's what you meant there, as a step towards developing critical system thinking, or become a specialist therein?
Thank you, Gavin. Lean Six Sigma has got its application. It is one of the tools that contributes to systems thinking. And it's always good to qualify in whatever. Lean Six Sigma is a stepping stone. It's good to be qualified in that. It specifically addresses waste optimizing current situations. It focuses on a specific problem. And it's a qualitative and quantitative method. We use statistics to dive into that problem and come out with the best solution for that problem. The reason why you would actually need critical systems thinking in a combination with that is you may be having a perfect solution for the wrong problem. The particular problem that you are solving with Lean Six Sigma, if you take your view 2 or 3 steps up in the process of a system that you are deploying, that particular process may even be something that is not optimized or may not even be necessary in the process. And now you've spent a lot of time in optimizing this. Once you've applied critical systems thinking and you've got a good understanding of how your whole system works, how the whole process works, how all the different elements come together, and that includes people and the soft elements, and you have defined these elements and these processes as the key ones, then a tool like Lean Six Sigma is perfect to optimize those different elements in the process. But be careful to use a tool in isolation and think that's the total solution.
So this idea of multiple approaches, multiple tools we can use, are we using the right tool to solve the right problem? And to your point, Paul, are we actually solving the right problem?
Thank you.
Awesome, thanks. Barry asked and said, we all model our system context, and I've got to read this, differently, including elements that interact with the system. How do we ensure that we are thinking towards an acceptable or correct result in the terms of systems thinking? There's a tough one for the panel on Wednesday morning.
Nick would want to do that one.
So I'll start off by, we love to introduce people on the course that we've developed with Digital Campus to the concept of the poached egg diagram. And it's a technique that was developed by a guy called Derek Hitchens. And Derek he's an incredible man. If you watch his videos under Systems World and stuff like that, you'll be inspired. But I think what's key about what he came up with is he came up with this thing and he called it the poached egg diagram. Just as an aside, in COSI, the International Council on Systems Engineering, get really annoyed with me when I call it the poached egg diagram, and they go, it's just a system hierarchy diagram. They get really annoyed. But the reason why I like using the poached egg diagram as a term is because it sticks. People remember it. And what it does in that is you define your system of interest, which is the area that you are looking at, and defining boundaries can go horribly wrong. If you look at the Project Management Institute, it actually talks about scope definition being one of the major causes of issues in projects and evolving into scope creep and all those sort of things. So when you define your system of interest, you can say, I understand what I'm focusing on, but I'm cognizant of the other links to sibling systems within the greater context. Without understanding those linkages, you might not understand, you may not be able to integrate. Remember, I told you that's where the sweat happens. And at that point, you can find yourself in a position that the whole thing actually falls over. As we did on a number, we've seen on a number of projects, and I won't go into them because of time. Little, do you want to add anything, just because I saw your hand up?
Okay, no, thanks, Nick, you're very kind. Yeah, maybe just one quick addition on my side is the way we use some of these tools is to communicate. A lot of things normally go wrong because there's no communication in projects. So the different tools that we use to model, we do a fair amount of modeling, whether it's system dynamics or graphical representations. And it's not to show that we can model, no, it's to communicate. So I like it when people talk about we model our context differently. So I'm saying you use the tools to model, and then you don't stop there, you communicate. If, for example, Nick likes the poached egg diagram, he can use that. Paul can go and use causal loop diagrams. I can come and I use the rich picture. And as a team, when we share that, that's when now we can explain our perspectives. Remember, one of the elements of systems thinking, it's about including other stakeholders. So you need that view. And when you have that view and you communicate it, that's where you can start to align. That's where you can have that aha moment to say, oh, now I see where you're coming from. I see why you're constantly asking this question, is because this is your perspective. And that way, it will help you to move towards, using your words, acceptable and correct results in terms of your application area. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessel, for this. It's so wonderful, you know, in the richness of approaching this from a diverse and inclusive perspective, of calling people into the process of looking at a situation, is where we're going to find the richness of opportunity to get to a better solution. And this idea of, you know, you can use what different models may suit you, but in the end, it's about, to your point, the communication and arriving at and encouraging this diversity of views. It's such an awesome idea, and thanks for reminding us of that. Lorna's asked, and I'm conscious of time, and maybe this will be the last one, bar one. from a training perspective, she says, I think that we sometimes read and do courses too much. I've seen this in my son, who has so much conflicting information in his mind that he still doesn't know. And I suppose it's this idea of the overwhelmed, people, that there's so much information out there. How would you respond to Lorna on that one, Anna?
Looking at Paul.
Okay.
The doctor's got his hand up.
No, Paul.
Okay.
Paul,
I'll
if you're
take a
happy,
first
you
step,
can-
and then it's not too good, Aaron.
Okay.
I think you're right. Nick mentioned that information and data is probably the future currency, but we also need to be able to sift that information and data to make it useful and understand it. And yes, I think particularly the young people are struggling with all the information that they are being bombarded with and so on. So back to the page deck and the system diagrams that Nick were referring to, it's about an understanding of what do you include. What are the elements that you need to address that impacts the situation that you are confronted with? And that also applies to our children at their age, to be able to sift out. I want to use the systems thinking term of creating a boundary. What can you control? What is within this element that you are addressing? What information do you need? And what information is environment information? You need to take cognizance of it, but it doesn't really impact this element that you need to handle and address today. We'll pass to Letotlo on that one.
No, thank you very much. I think, Paul, you've covered it well. But it is also important to understand that learning is a cycle. You don't just read and understand, and we learn for different reasons. And I think in that cycle, I sometimes I forgot now the author of this learning cycle theory, where they start by saying that it starts being chaotic when you're busy trying to learn something, and you might be unconsciously incompetent for that matter. You don't know what you don't know, so you're just reading everything. So sometimes a bit of focus helps. And that's why learning also, requires not just the learner, but the parents' support is important, and the educator as well. And you need to move out of that state. And I sometimes talk about this. It's better for you to be unconsciously competent, where some people. They do things, they know things, but you don't know where it's really coming from. And the bigger thing is that as you learn, you're moving from this unconscious incompetence and you are consciously competent, then you start knowing what you don't know. And that chaos that you're talking about starts to be clear. That's where you can start filing things to say, oops, I need to do this in order to do that. And then you start becoming consciously competent. And that's the learning cycle. And at the end of the day, you end up, that same person that is struggling soon, if they go through this, other people talk about forming, storming, norming type things in terms of teams. It's a process. Allow it to happen. Just don't get stuck in a phase or in an era. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Letotlo. So also what I'm hearing there coming through in what you're sharing is it's also about the environment within which people are operating. To what extent is that environment accepting of divergent ideas, acceptance of this disruption? I know there's a number of questions, people asking, Masulu asking, do you mean by disruptive culture? Do you also mean competitiveness and execution intelligence? I don't know if you've got a quick comment on that before we start wrapping it up. I think Marcelo's might have a good point there.
Yeah, look, I think as an organization, maybe one thing I can say is you must challenge your preconceptions, or they will challenge you. And they can challenge you internally, they can challenge you through your competitors. So And that is why I'm saying stay a learner, have that disruptive culture, be receptive to to these changes in your organization, and changes. The bigger environment includes the other stakeholders in your area, whether it's internal or external competitors, entrepreneurs. I mean, all entrepreneurs they look for an opportunity, and if they have the capacity, they will go for it. They notice the opportunity, they go for it. So that's where we're coming from. But yes, competitors tracking all of that, it's very important.
Thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm conscious of time. We've got 3 minutes, and I promise to stick to ending within the hour. I want to first of all say thank you to the panel. Thank you, Nick, for all your efforts in putting the presentation together. Paul, Lesotho, for your time today, and your wonderful insights on the raft of questions. There were many questions, unfortunately, that we didn't get to. But I know we'll have other opportunities to pick up on these and perhaps connect in another way. Ladies and gentlemen, to everybody that attended, thank you again for taking the time out. Just a reminder that we will be making the recording available to everybody. And I've noted that there were requests for the names of the books and so forth, Nick, that you shared for us to make those available. And what we will be doing in a mailer that's going to be coming out to everybody with a copy to the YouTube channel of Digital Campus, where you'll find the recording made available to you. We'll be sure to post that through to you with all the references and so forth. Ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you on a webinar sometime soon, hosted by BITS and BITS Digital Campus. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful, what's today, Wednesday, Tuesday. And I've got too many days in my mind. So thank you very much and have a wonderful day, and look forward to catching you on the other side. Thank you, everybody.